Hello, everyone, and happy Saturday to you. It's Saturday night, and I'm broadcasting live from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is where Carnegie Mellon University is. That's where I work. It's also a great pleasure to be able to talk to you all on this Daily Challenge YouTube channel, where we've had the fun of having mathematics every day. Well, today's the weekend, and whenever it's the weekend, the style of this weekend live stream is a little bit different. If you're familiar with the live streams that I've been running, I like to try to show people a different angle on mathematics. And so during the week, we sort of answer any questions that you might have about math. The goal of the weekend show is to maybe talk about something a little bit more focused that I might have brought in. And there will be a math problem, which I'll talk about. It's a math problem that I was thinking about very recently because math is useful in real life. And after that, maybe I'll make a little bit of a comment about how that's relevant to real life. And then we open up to just take any kinds of questions about almost anything. When I say almost anything, what I mean is I won't be answering questions that are math problems in this weekend live stream. Those we do on the weekdays. Instead, we'll use the rest of the time to talk about questions that might have something to do with how to learn math, or what to do with math, or just things that aren't very specific. How do you do this particular kind of question, or something like that. So that's the outline, and it's a real pleasure to be able to do this every single weekend with all of you. You know, this whole thing started because of COVID-19. As some of you know, I love to run around the whole country and the whole world giving math talks to try to show people a different angle on math. And then when COVID-19 made it so that we couldn't go and have these kinds of events, then instead I started to do these live streams instead, so I could at least every weekend get a chance to talk to some people. I actually used to do these kinds of things every weekend in different cities. But why did I bring up COVID-19? It's because it's been a while. In fact, I think this is the episode 12 or something like that of our live stream. And indeed, I've been thinking about what we can do to try to fight COVID-19. And some of you may know I've been working on an app to try to do that. Today's math problem is actually a problem I had to think about when I was developing the app. And so, as I said, I like to bring a question to you every weekend, which is something in math that might be related to something in real life. Are you ready? I have a problem for you. And I promise you, it's actually a pretty interesting problem that has some relationship to things that people in the real world might care about. Here you go. So the question is like this. Let's suppose we have two phones which are trying to talk via ultrasound. Now, that's actually the core of how the Novid app works. We have phones and they communicate with ultrasound. And what's going on with these phones is that they happen to be in the centers of two 30-inch tall desks. Now, the centers of the desks are spaced 4 feet apart. The shortest path for the sound to travel is actually not straight from one to the other because there are people sitting in the desks. Now, the sound travels at the speed of 1 foot per millisecond, approximately. And the ceiling is 10 feet above. Actually, I just realized there's something a little bit off about this picture. In this diagram, I don't want the two phones to be on desks which are right next to each other. I want them to be on desks that are spaced 1 apart. So there's not supposed to be a phone here, there's supposed to be a phone up there. So the question is, how long does it take the sound to travel all the way up and all the way down to the other point? Does the question make sense? This is a problem of phones which are broadcasting sound signals to each other, but ultrasound is something that cannot go through people. Well, it can go through people, but not efficiently. So effectively, I've got a phone here. The other phone should be up here, which is 2 squares away, and it's going up and then down. How long does it take the sound to travel? So now I want to give people some time to think about this. I also usually use this time to make a few comments to parents or to any coaches who might be watching. A question like this is interesting because it happens to have something which is related to real life, and it also happens to be a problem that can be used to experience or think about some geometry. And geometry is actually where this whole problem is. In fact, we need to go and think about 3-dimensional space. You know, this particular picture is a top-down view. It's a view looking downward at a bunch of desks. But the sound is bouncing off of the ceiling. So if you're going to think about a question like this, the reason why this is an interesting question to think about is that it involves thinking outside the box. Hint number 1 is try to draw a better diagram. A better diagram where you can actually see the kind of geometry that you're going to have to work on. You see, again, if you came in late, this diagram is not quite right. There's supposed to be one phone here, and the other phone is supposed to be up there. They're not supposed to be right next to each other. There's supposed to be an empty desk in between. And so the point of this question is one which encourages people to try to see if you can draw a picture and see what kind of geometry that you want to use. Another comment, if there are any teachers, parents, or coaches here, you see that I ran the whole thing with a hint. I think that the best way to learn is when there's a hard question or a question you have to think about, and one where the question is not necessarily that easy for people to do off right away. But then you put hints in between, and with those hints, you can help somebody actually figure out how to solve the problem on their own. For example, the first hint was draw a better diagram. But after you draw a better diagram, then what? Then you should stare at the diagram, and you should wonder, what kind of math could I actually use? And it turns out this is related to the Pythagorean theorem. So now I've given you 2 hints. If you're a student and you're playing with this, I recommend you try to think about this. And remember, even if you came in late, the diagram is not quite right. There's one phone here, and the other phone is supposed to be there. They're supposed to be on 2 desks that are spaced, and there's nothing in the middle one there. But the desks are 4 feet apart from center to center. The desks are 30 inches above the ground, and the ceiling is 10 feet high. And by the way, all of these numbers are reasonable. So another comment for parents, coaches, and teachers, I like to choose questions that are as realistic as I can make them, especially if there's something interesting about the numbers inside. So there's going to be something about this problem where the numbers are going to work out beautifully, and we'll even get to learn a little bit of number theory inside. And so that's, in my opinion, the heart of a good problem. Maybe you can relate to it, maybe you can think about it, you can find a creative way to solve it, and at the end, we'll find something interesting about math. All right, I see some people had some answers. This is quite interesting to me to see answers that people have put up. But, you know, people have different answers of different amounts of time. 18 milliseconds, 25 milliseconds, 15 milliseconds, 12-ish milliseconds. Let's see if we can try to figure this out. And I'm intentionally doing this problem, even with an audience that might not be in super advanced math, because it's something we can all think about. And someone saying, hi, bye, says, hi, bye. Well, no, you said, is there a 3, 4, 5 triangle inside? There's something even better. So let's do the first hint. The first hint said, draw a better diagram. Because how can you think about bouncing off the ceiling if we can't see anything? So the better diagram would look something like this. Here is the ceiling. Okay, so I've got a ceiling up there. And I also have some desks. So the desks, I guess, here's one desk. Here's another desk. And here's another desk. All of these are supposed to be at the same height, so maybe I'll draw that line a little bit better. They're all supposed to be about the same height. Okay, so these are 3 desks. Aha, I see some people are listing these different kinds of right triangles, and that's exactly what this is about. So we've got these desks, okay? And we also know some other things about the desks. We know that the desks are 4 feet apart from center to center. Okay. And furthermore, the phones are kind of in the middle. So that means that I've got my phones. My phones are somehow here and here. And so in that case, I know something about the distances between those phones. Actually, those phones, there's a 4 feet apart and another 4 feet apart here. Okay, so I'm starting to get there. I'm starting to build some kind of a triangle, right? Because there was a second hint, which was something about the Pythagorean theorem. But so if I have this, now what do I need? I'm not done yet. I know that both of these are 4, but I need to know something about the ceiling, right? So if I've got a ceiling, I think I need to draw the path that the sound waves are taking. So the sound waves are going up to the ceiling and then down to the other phone. And by the way, it should be very symmetric. I mean, the desks are the same height, and the way sound works is it goes up and it comes down, and you have a symmetry between the going up part. Going up for you guys is this way, yeah, going up and then going down, right? For me, I always have to flip because of the fact that I'm basically playing the role of a weatherman, in that whenever I'm recording to you guys, my left and right are flipped. But okay, so it goes up and it goes down. Great. So actually, yes, thank you very much. Somebody said, so the sound wave hits the ceiling in the middle. That makes perfect sense. But you need to draw a better diagram. And this is not enough to solve the problem. But hint number 2 said, Pythagorean theorem. Ah, yes. So somebody, Diane Zhao asked, what is the question? The question is, we have these two devices. These two are phones, and they're both making well, one's making sound, and it's bouncing off the ceiling to get to the other one. That's what's going on. And the problem is that there are people sitting here. So there's like a person sitting there, there's a person sitting there. It's blocking the sound to go straight, and so the sound actually bounces off the ceiling and comes down. And the question is, how long is that yellow path? And so, well, in that case, I need to draw more stuff. Actually, it would be very helpful to draw a vertical line coming right down from the center. It in fact comes right down to the place where the 4s are. So the next question is, how long is that blue vertical line? Does anyone know? The ceiling is 10 feet tall, right? So if the ceiling is 10 feet tall, shouldn't that vertical line be 10? Oh, no. This is where in any problem you need to read the question carefully, right? So somehow the ceiling is 10 feet tall, except that the desks are 30 inches above the ground. So I need to do 10 feet minus 30 inches. What's 10 feet minus 30 inches? It's horrible, because 30 inches is not something in feet. So first of all, I'm going to erase the 10 because it's not 10. But if I actually want to know what is 10 feet minus 30 inches, then you start to say, who invented this way of measuring distances? You know, like that's no fun. What's the best way? What's the best way to subtract these two? Well, okay, somebody said that you could say 30 inches is 2.5 feet. That is true. And in fact, you can do arithmetic with decimals and fractions, and it works quite well. I was a bit more lazy. I said, I want to do the whole thing in inches because I don't want to worry about fractions. And if I do the whole thing in inches, I'm not scared of converting 10 feet into inches, because to convert from feet to inches, you have to multiply by 12, but the number is 10, and 10 is easy. So if I want to convert everything into inches, this is 120 inches minus 30 inches, which is equal to 90 inches. Okay, so this is 90. So does everyone like my triangle now? Is this the right way to draw it? I have a 90 and I have a 4 and a 4? No, this is bad. The reason this is bad is because they're in different units. The 90 is in inches, and the 4 is in feet. So I need to make everything into inches. But the good thing is that 4 feet is 48 inches. I multiply by 12. Oh, this is convenient. There's already a 4. I'll just write an 8 afterwards. Hooray! Now we're almost done. Because now we have two triangles. They're both right triangles. Right triangle means that the angle is 90 degrees. And so I just need to know how long is the yellow thing, and I'll times it by 2. So how long is the yellow thing? Let's take a look at one of these. Just one of the triangles has 48 and 90. Now the second hint was the Pythagorean theorem. And the Pythagorean theorem says if I take this 48 squared plus this 90 squared, that will be whatever the yellow is squared. Who wants to do that? Not me, because these numbers are too big. I don't want to square those. By the way, if you're curious about the Pythagorean theorem, what I'd say is that there's an entire free lesson about that on the Daily Challenge website. That's daily.poshenloh.com. If you go there, there's a full explanation of the Pythagorean theorem and why it's true. But that's why in today's weekend live stream, I'm not going to reprove it. We're just going to use it. But this is not fun to go and square this, add it up, and hope to take a square root. There's a better trick. The better trick is to kind of reduce down to a smaller case. To go and say, well, this is a nice triangle. But in actuality, that triangle I could get by taking a smaller triangle and scaling it up. In fact, I can take a smaller triangle and scale it by 6. I chose 6 because I can divide 90 by 6 and 48 by 6. I see that I'm not the only one. Chen Liang also says divide it, and all these people are saying 8, 15, 17. This, by the way, is what happens. If I divide by 6, what do I get? 90 divided by 6 is 15. This is not drawn to scale. It should be 6 times smaller, but then you wouldn't see anything. 48 divided by 6 is 8. Now, what in the world is the yellow length? Now I need to know what's the yellow length. And now I actually have to use the Pythagorean theorem. I need to go and figure out what is 15 squared plus 8 squared and take a square root. Well, 15 squared is equal to, it turns out to be equal to 225. And there are many ways to do that. You could do it by yourself, just multiplying. Or there's also a nice trick. Again, we talk about that in other classes, so I won't be able to do that here. And then the 8 squared is 64. So if I add them all together, if I don't know what is this length here, I'll call it C. I don't know what is C. I see so many people are figuring this out. This is so wonderful. If I add them together, then it should be C squared, because that's what happens when you add the A squared and the B squared. It'll be the C squared. And that length squared is 225 plus 64, which is 5 plus 4 is 9, 2 and 6 is 8, 289. Now, the square root of 289 turns out to be what everyone's posting. Because, of course, I told you I chose numbers that are nice. And if you want to find something that squares to be ending in a 9, it should either end in a 3 or end in a 7. And if you try a few, it's like, yeah, okay, 17 actually works. I mean, we can check it over here. 17 times 17. 7 is 49. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 4 is 11. 7, 1. Oh my gosh, it works. And it almost runs into my head. But it's okay, it's 289. So that means that C is 17. So if C is 17, let's clear the C. That's 17. Oops. That's 17. So then what's this? Oh, I have to multiply 17 by 6. But I'm going to give you another tip. Don't multiply it out. Just write that it's 17 times 6. And there's a reason why. It's because I'm not done yet. You save your calculations, your computations until the end, right? Because that's going to be 17 times 6 for the sound traveling up for that distance. But the whole distance is going to be double that. So the whole distance going up and down is going to be 17 times 12 inches. Is that convenient? So I've just found out that the up and then the down is 17 times 12 inches. Can anyone turn that into feet? That's easy. That's just going to be 17 feet. Okay, if I have 17 feet, now what happens? So if I have 17 feet, there was something I told you, which is that sound is traveling at approximately 1 foot every millisecond. And so that's so easy. I have the whole thing in feet already. So if I want to know how long it takes the sound to go up and then back down, the answer is just going to be 17 milliseconds. And approximately, because sound doesn't go exactly 1 foot every millisecond, it goes approximately. So the answer to the whole problem is that it will be 17 milliseconds. ms is a millisecond. And that's it. Okay, so that's the question for today. This is about sound traveling. Speaking of sound, actually, I realized that somebody seems to be trying to message me nonstop. Let me go and make sure my phone stops dinging, because that's getting kind of frustrating. 1 second here. So I happen to be in a situation where there's a lot of different things going on at the same time, and that's exactly why sometimes it's going. Actually, now that I see what was dinging, that was my guess. What was dinging is that last year's International Math Olympiad team is doing some kind of a crossword puzzle, and they're all chatting about it right now. But that's completely a separate issue. Okay, yes, everyone heard a ding. What's going on is that for some reason, last year's United States International Math Olympiad team likes to do a lot of crossword puzzles, and so they were all chatting about that at the same time. Okay, so let's not discuss that right now. But now let's go back and talk a little bit about the whole point of this question. You see, I promised you that the question would be something reasonable, something that's related to real life. And this is exactly what we're doing with Novid. You may or may not have noticed that I've been working on an app to try to help stop the spread of COVID-19. And one of the articles that just came out on Friday was a news release by Carnegie Mellon University, which is where I work, about the fact that we have now found a way to use ultrasound to help to find out anonymously whether or not you have been near somebody else. And ultrasound is something which is it's something that every single phone can emit. Ultra just means that you can't hear it, but dogs can. But it happens to be just outside of your hearing. And when you use ultrasound, you're able to measure the amount of time it takes for sound to travel to go and figure out how far away things are. But then the issue is that if you have somebody sitting in between, like so suppose you had something blocking the sound, one of the things about ultrasound is that it actually doesn't like to go through things. It can go through things, but it gets a lot softer. On the other hand, ultrasound likes to go in straight lines. So in situations like this, the fortunate thing is that ceilings are only 10 feet tall. And so then we're able to sense distances by saying, well, then that means you bounced off the ceiling. Or we'll use the fact that you bounced off the ceiling instead to get a measurement of maybe how far away you are. So this exact problem of what happens with bouncing off ceilings is something I was doing. In fact, when I came up with the idea, well, not came up with the idea, when I actually, so I was one of the people who programmed it, but when I actually programmed it and started testing, I was like, this is interesting. Sometimes when I put an obstacle in between these two devices, the distance goes up, but it doesn't go up by much. I wonder what it is. And then I realized it was the ceiling because of the Pythagorean theorem. And so actually having that mathematical insight was really helpful in figuring out what was going on with the ultrasound. And so this is something that I think about right now. And there's a lot of math that goes into doing anything that's useful. So if someday you guys want to do something else that's not just math problems, I hope you can see from these daily and weekly live streams that the kind of things that someone encounters when they're trying to do like a real problem is often this kind of thing that you might see in like a math contest class. Okay, so that's this component of the live stream. This is the one focused around a problem. The next part of the live stream is something where I just go and start answering like random questions about all kinds of other topics. And as I said, these questions will not be the ones of like, how do I do this particular math problem? These are going to be the ones which are like, more general problems, more general questions. If you have math-specific questions, I encourage you to come on the daily ones. I'm also going to pull up this monitor here. I've got a bunch of different screens which are showing me the different kinds of questions people have. I see. So I actually see that there's a bunch of different questions. There was one pretty early on saying, how did you get into Caltech? Yes, I did go to Caltech, California Institute of Technology, for my undergraduate degree for college. How did I get in? I don't know. I applied and I got in. I want to encourage you all, do your best. It's not possible for everyone to get into their dream college. That's not the important thing anyway. In fact, when I applied to Caltech, I'll be honest, I didn't know much about it. I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin, and I hadn't really heard much about this Caltech place. I didn't know, but it seemed like an interesting place. I applied, I got in, and I went and I made my own, I guess I made my own history, if that makes sense. It's just like you're always the one who makes your own history, in the sense that you choose what you do with your life, and you don't have to let your life be defined by what university you went to. So I encourage all of you to do that, and especially in this day and age where university life is even a little bit different, it's even more important to try to make sure that whatever university you go to, you make the most of it. Actually, that's a pretty interesting topic right now, because as we're rolling out Novid, we are actually working with people from lots and lots of different universities to have this thing grow across all of the university campuses. Because actually, if anyone wants to go back to college in fall, we're going to have to need something like this. Okay, more questions. I see a lot of these questions. Is Novid in the App Store? So actually, I can tell you, if any of you were watching the live stream on Friday and I said, oh, there's somebody who seems to have called from California, actually, that was Apple. So we're working on all of these things. We're not done yet. There's always a lot of challenges, and in order to make something that might be useful for the entire public, it actually takes a lot of work to go and talk to the right people and make sure that we let people understand who we are. We're not just a bunch of random people who have something that's broken. We actually maybe know what we're doing. So yes, we're working on all of this stuff. All of these things take work. And honestly, if any of you know people who are at Apple or Google or interested in helping to make sure we stop COVID-19 by having an effective way to anonymously trace whether you've been around other people who have COVID-19, please do contact us. We'd be very happy to work with you. It's free, by the way. Okay, other questions. What else do we have here? So somebody has asked, do you play an instrument? Or have you ever played an instrument? If so, what? Well, when I went to middle school, the middle school I went to had like a music class where you play things on the keyboard. So they had like these, like a piano keyboard thing. And so I kind of learned how to play with 2 fingers. Sort of like how some people know how to type with 2 fingers. I can play the piano with 2 fingers. I think what that means is no, I don't know how to play an instrument, because compared to many of the people who are watching this live stream, I am like one of these people. I think I could play Mary Had a Little Lamb. Maybe once a long time ago. But I appreciate people who can. I had a roommate in college who was really into violin, and I think that it's beautiful whenever somebody is really, really into music. I think it's wonderful to watch. So unfortunately, I myself never got into it. On the other hand, I appreciate people who do. Let's see. What else do we have here? So somebody asked me, do I know Rubik's Cuber? Cool, we have a Rubik's Cuber here. Rubik's Cuber asks, do I know any human calculators? I'm very proud to say that one of the people who graduated from this university, Carnegie Mellon University, many years ago, is one of the human calculators. He's known as the mathemagician. He works right now at a university in California, which is called Harvey Mudd College. And his name is Art Benjamin. And he's quite an interesting person. So I had the chance to not only talk to him before, because he's a former student from this university, but also because I got to watch one of his talks before. They're amazing. And it is really interesting to go and see people who have chosen to go and spend some of their time figuring out how to optimize like this, the art of calculation. Quite interesting. Yes, so the answer is yes, I do. More questions. Oh, interesting. Someone has a question about the problem we just talked about. Kelsey Chan. Oh, it's not Kelsey Chan. It was Pravina Madavarapu. I like to get names right. So Madavarapu. Pravina Madavarapu. Yes. And you asked, how did you know that we actually got the shortest path? Because maybe there's another path for the sound to travel in. And you're right. Actually, as we're making the Novid app, we can see that there's like different amounts of time that the sound wave gets in. And so, in fact, the one that goes to the ceiling is just the loudest path. That's the one which has the least having to go through something else. On the other hand, there's other paths, like bouncing off of other students in the classroom, but that's not as loud of a signal. Because actually, if you try to bounce a sound wave off of someone's head, the head is round. And so if the sound wave goes there, you're only going to get a little bit of it that goes precisely to the spot that you want it to go to. So the answer is there are shorter paths, but those shorter paths are actually not what gets picked up when you try to measure it on the other side because the signal looks too weak. But it's a very, very interesting question. And in fact, I'll even say there is an even shorter path. It's called right through the people in a straight line. And we can also see that. But the problem is that the signal strength is very weak by the time it gets through there. And the thing that you notice is the one that went all the way up and down. Michael Dong has a question. And the question is called tornadoes. That's a very interesting question you have there. I'll tell you, I grew up in a city, Madison, Wisconsin, where there were tornadoes. There was tornado watches, tornado warnings. And a long time ago, I went to the Math Olympiad training program when I was a student. And that used to be in Lincoln, Nebraska. It is now always held in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But back in the day, it was in Lincoln, Nebraska, and there were tornadoes that you had to worry about. That was a place with tornadoes. And here's the thing for the mathematicians out there. It's that, there was this Math Olympiad training camp, and on day one, there's always orientation. And orientation is when someone comes in and says, here's what you have to do in the case of a tornado. If there's a tornado, what you have to do is you need to make sure you go to the basement, because that's what you should always do. And you go to the basement, and that helps to make sure that if anything collapses, you'll be okay. And then they would tell you, and by the way, that's what we do in the case of a tornado alarm. There's a special alarm for that. You go to the basement. There's a different alarm. The different alarm is the fire alarm. When there's a fire alarm, what you need to do is you need to go outside. Because if there's a fire, you should go outside, obviously. And here's like the shortest way to go outside. And the problem is whenever you give this kind of a talk to a room full of math students, like every single year, someone would raise their hand and say, what if there's a tornado and a fire at the same time? At which point the answer is a little bit unfortunate, actually. So the answer is actually there's no good solution. But anyway, so that's what I thought of when I saw you say tornadoes. Yes, tornado versus fire is a bad situation. So I think that there is no good answer to that. And the only thing I can say is that the good thing is that tornadoes don't strike everything. But usually when there's a tornado watch or a tornado warning, it will usually only affect a few specific locations. But so anyway, that's what I think of when I think of tornadoes. I think of where I grew up, and I think of where I spent many of my summers. Somebody has asked, did you go to Math Counts Nationals? I go every year. I love to watch. Oh, that's not the question you asked. The question you asked is, did I go as a student? Yes, I did. But back then, I'll say you guys are much smarter than what we were. I mean, back then, there was no way to go and watch a YouTube and go and learn math. I mean, back then, there were so few people who were trying out for that the fact that I went to Math Counts Nationals does not make me a super genius. I was just one of those people who chose to try. These days, you guys can just turn on your YouTube, and suddenly you're surrounded by all these people who even know what Math Counts Nationals is and are asking these kinds of questions. So hopefully, whether you go to Math Counts Nationals or not, you'll learn something interesting. And it doesn't really matter what you do in these contests. What matters is what you do later in real life. And I seriously mean that. Whenever I work with any talented students who do well in contests, my thought always when I'm thinking about it is like, yep, I'm really glad that you have this talent. It's wonderful to watch what you're doing. And I sincerely hope that in 20 or 30 years, if there's ever something that the world needs you to do, that you will step up and do it. This is actually what I've always thought. Like I've worked with students for, over 10 years, and everything I always thought was, it's wonderful to see this talent. You're great to see that you're doing these math problems, and that means that someday, if the world needs you, you can use that ability. But my thought is always, you have a responsibility to do something with that. Okay, more questions. What do we have here? Oh my gosh, somebody asked me what keyboard model do I have. Okay, the keyboard, since you seem to be geeking out over keyboards, I'll tell you what it is. The brand is by Vortex. I think it's called the Vortex Poker 2. It's a special keyboard. The keyboard actually does not have any F keys, so it's shorter that way. It also has no arrow keys, so it's missing this part. It also has no page up, page down and all that, and it has no like number pad. So it's really, really tiny. It's like this. And the reason I have that keyboard is because, it also is one of these clicky, noisy ones. So if you type on it, you feel it yourself typing. It goes like ka-chunk, 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 just like a typewriter, and it makes you type more efficiently. But the reason I got this particular one is because I used to go to different cities every weekend to go and give these math talks. And it was a way that I could even put it in my backpack. And that way I'd spend my day giving talks, and I'd spend my night being able to work more efficiently. More questions. Shireen Zhang says no F keys. Okay, well, actually, the way you do it with F keys there is there's an FN button. So it's like if I press this button and then press the 2, then it's actually F2. So in fact, it's quite efficient. It's like, come on, how often do you really need to press an F key? Yes, occasionally. But if you just have a little FN button, you can just like hold that down and press the 5, and that does F5. Okay, great. More questions. I see. So this is a very interesting question. Robot X, who you're clearly not a robot based on the intelligence of this question. A lot of important math competitions are cancelled. Math counts. AMO, that's the USA Mathematical Olympiad. Unfair for kids who put their hearts to them. What should we do to make up? I can I can identify with this question because I used to do all these math contests. And to me, actually, the biggest loss is not that people don't get to do the contests. It's that they don't get to have the community that is formed around it. It's like in math counts, the best part of math counts is meeting other people at the contests. And the best part of these math Olympiads is that also there's an in-person component. So here's what I would say. It's actually, first of all, the fact that you dedicated so much of your energy towards these, that's not wasted. It's not wasted at all. In fact, one of the best ways to become smarter is actually to do these problems. These Amy problems make you smarter. They make it so that someday if you're looking at a very hard problem in the world, you won't be like, I have no idea what to do. In fact, you'll actually be able to figure it out. You see, the world is not just about the math contest. The math contest is a very important tool that can help you someday in some crazy time in the world, which will happen surely to you within 20 or 30 years of your life. You will be equipped with the ability to do stuff that people who didn't prepare for those math contests might not be as familiar with. So my real advice is, don't let that get to you and be like, oh my gosh, I prepared all this for nothing. Oh, it wasn't for nothing. I mean, the kind of work that I've been doing over the last month to try to go and combat COVID-19, I have used so many of these things from the computer science contests, from the mathematical thinking that was involved in doing Amy problems and math counts problems, like that willingness to go and try to do a hard question. All of those were essential. And that's also why, with Novid, actually, I was the guy who wrote some of our most critical pieces of software, like actually writing the code. And that's because I was drawing from the things that I had learned way back in the day. Actually, I even used ideas that are related to sign product identities, like sign A times sign B. If you're curious about that, just go and check out the YouTube video that I gave about 2 weeks ago to math teachers about the mathematics that's behind the Novid app. But I'm just trying to show you that somehow, all of these things that you were preparing for, don't worry. It's like those were not only for the purpose of winning a contest. Those were to get some skills. And I've really noticed that people who build up those skills are eventually able to do a lot of amazing things in the world if they choose to do so. Now, there's another question of what can we do to at least be fair and celebrate these achievements. I mean, because it's not quite right to just go and say, good for you, it'll be good for you and you'll help the world in 20 years. That doesn't quite cut it either. So I do also think it would be a good idea to go and try to help there be a way for people to, enjoy the fact that they've done some of these things. What will happen to the world? I don't even know. I mean, when I say I don't know, it's that, people aren't even sure if there's going to be school in fall. We don't know. We don't know if there's going to be school in fall. And who knows what will happen? I'm just making up something here, but maybe there might be a situation where it's almost like everybody stayed back a year. That might actually happen. And in fact, I'm saying that because in some parts of the country, people might even not have access to school. Like, not everyone is so lucky as to be able to be at home on a very fast internet connection to watch this YouTube live stream, right? It's not quite fair to go and say, for this entire 12 months, some people got to learn a lot and some other people don't. So I don't know what's going to happen. But I'll say that definitely from my position, like anything that I have any control over or anything that I am able to give advice for, my opinion is, let's let people go ahead and try to play these contests. People did prepare. It would be great to let them play at it. But on your side, please also make sure that you just see this always as a learning opportunity, because not everyone will win. Not everyone will win. And if you don't win, don't go and say it's wasted. You still got something out of it. More stuff. Let's see. More questions. More questions. Oh, this is a good one. And you see, this is the topic of these kinds of live streams that I do on the weekend. They're more of like how you cope with life or how you cope with learning. This is by someone who asked, what would you say is the psychological impact on children whose parents emphasize results over process or academics over social life, who constantly compare their children to other kids? Yeah, I think that causes people to then compare, right? So there was something about compare to other kids. I generally don't recommend doing that. I mean, this is a parenting thing. I don't recommend doing that. I think that the reason I don't think that's good is because there are some people who are just way better. I mean, there are some people who, even if you try as hard as you can, they will be way better. And furthermore, if you always compare against other people, it's like maybe somebody will show up all of a sudden who's just like a super genius. And then what's going to happen? You're going to be like, I'm lousy. So I've never really compared against other people. I just always compare against myself. Now, I do think it's very good to compare against yourself. You see, there's a difference here. It's like, should you just say like, whatever, I don't care? No, not at all. I'm just saying that your benchmark should change. You should use the benchmark of self. Don't use the benchmark of other people. But if you use the benchmark of self, you will keep getting better. And that's because you should actually be always saying, I'm going to compare against myself, but I am not satisfied to be the same today as I was yesterday. Now, if you have that attitude, you will be unstoppable because you will just keep going ahead and ahead and ahead. It's like after you've done something, it's like, well, okay, now it's boring to do that thing again. Can I do something bigger? Can I do something better? You get more ambitious. So my point is, you should be very, very comparing things, but you should compare against yourself. Or like, you know, if parents want to suggest benchmarks for their children, it's like compare against yourself. And that also brings up the other topic, like mathematics over social life. I think that social life is one thing, social skills are another thing. I think that it's quite reasonable to have friends and like social life is good, but a certain thing I've always taken to social life is I want to make sure my social life is giving me social skills. So I'm actually I pick and choose with my time that I spend. I do enjoy hanging out. I do enjoy hanging out with people. It is fun. It is fun to shoot the breeze and like chat, right? But it's also fun to be like, these things that I'm doing with these friends are making me more capable of someday building an organization, getting a bunch of people together to try to solve a major problem. You know, like if you never build the social skills, it's also useless. Because what if you get some idea, but you can't convince people to help you, right? Like the Novid app that we built, there's like 20 to 25 people who are all involved in doing this, and there's no way that I could have done this without them. And unfortunately, if all you do is focus only on mathematics, you wouldn't be able to get to that second point. So this particular piece of like the mathematics and social anything, make sure you build up those social skills. And the last one, well, it was the first part of the question. It was emphasizing results over process. I think that results are what are easy to look at. So sometimes it's easier to say, are there results or not? On the other hand, the process, in my opinion, is more valuable as long as you are honest to yourself about whether you did do the process or not. So I think it's much better to go for the process, make sure you're balanced, building the social skills and the math skills, and compare against yourself. And that's one reason I want to do these live streams, because I know that some people watching these live streams are also parents. And so my advice to parents is that you can actually get all of the results you want by making sure you focus on, you know, these other elements instead. But not just like say we're doing that and like now we don't worry about anything. No, seriously doing those. You will notice that if a person becomes highly competitive with their past, which is what I am, If you're highly competitive with your past, you will just keep tracking forward and forward and forward and forward. And also, everyone needs to be honest to themselves about whether or not they're really making progress. To me, that's another important piece. This is about parenting, but it's also about being a person. I actually don't like if I got something wrong and I thought it was right. I mean, like, we call those silly mistakes when we're doing math contests. But there's also something where if you can deceive yourself into being right, into thinking you're right when you're wrong, then you don't get better. It's just terrible. So it's very, very good to learn how to gauge whether or not you're cheating yourself. And so that's directly related to these things like social life. It's related to things like process. It's related to things like comparing. It's like if you want to make it so you can't cheat yourself, of course you can use hard metrics like results, compare against other people, and just do math. However, if you learn instead how to really check whether or not you're cheating yourself and also have that level of ambition, well, then you'll go much farther. And so I encourage that instead. We still have some time for some more questions. Let's see. What do we have here? Okay. Well, thank you very much. I saw some comments liking the answer I just gave. I appreciate being able to help, and I hope actually that there are some parents who are watching this. Actually, one of my goals in running the weekend one is that if you are a parent, please tell other parents. The goal of this is not actually just to teach students like one math problem. The goal of this is also to have a chance to talk about these other topics with parents who are normally busy during the daily live streams. Okay. Okay, hello. There's someone called hello. And they say, was your dream job always math associated? And if not, what was it? Please answer. What was my dream job? My dream job was like something that would let me work with people and make people happy. I didn't really know what that would be. For a lot of my life, I thought maybe that would be being a professor. Because somehow being a professor, you get to discover new things, and you also get to work on teaching people. And so that's what I thought the dream job would be. And indeed, I really enjoy being a professor, so I think I probably got that part of it. On the other hand, after I started doing some things that have real-world impact outside of being a professor, I realized that those are also very interesting. So to be perfectly honest, I am really, really happy with what I'm doing right now. Not because it earns lots of money. In fact, it's not clear it does. No of it is free, for goodness sakes. But like somehow, I think that to me, dream job is that you actually got to do something that will leave some kind of an imprint. That's honestly what I care about. I care the most about that I won't be around forever. Someday I won't be here anymore. My only hope is that whatever I've left on this earth while I'm here survives. And there's some ideas or some memories or something that will go on beyond. And so I feel that the things that I'm doing right now are helping me accomplish that. And now the question is, would it be something involving math? Well, the answer is yes. And the reason it's yes is because math is power. And I'm not just telling you that to give you a slogan. I mean, actually, especially as I was building this Novid app, it became so clear that if you know math, you can start to do things that other people don't see. It's like even our idea of ultrasound. Like, how are we doing the ultrasound? We're using something called Fourier analysis, which is what you learn in college. And I mean, to be able to come up with and then actually implement things which are hard and technologically difficult and make you able to, actually track disease. This is really, really interesting. And without the math, there's no way that this would have happened. So I always viewed math as powerful. And I encourage all of you, learn all of that math, even if it looks like abstract and not relevant. When I was learning Fourier analysis as an undergraduate student, I was like, well, it's kind of cute. I don't think I'll ever use it. Well, I just did. Okay, more things. What else do we have here? I see that there's a 2-year-old brother who's watching this too. Hi, nice to meet you. Okay, let's see. We have like about 2 more minutes. What else can we do here? Oh, okay. And somebody asked, how to encourage my son to love math? This is a real question. My opinion is it actually comes from teachers and it comes from people around you. I think that having a less focused on the results helps, but also it helps, in my opinion, for people to meet someone that they say, I think I want to follow this path. And that's why one of my goals has been to try to show people that this path of math that you're all working on is actually really interesting and really powerful, and you should do it. And so I'm trying to contribute to your question right here by making there be something that, if somebody looks at, they can be like, well, maybe there is something to this. Maybe all of this like sine of A times sine of B, this thing I memorized, maybe it's actually useful, right? So I think that the teacher plays a part of this. And then I think the other piece of it is, if there are other people around, if there's a community of people who enjoy math, then it's also good. And that's why we're also happy to have this live chat on this daily live stream. Because what we have observed is that some people seem to have basically formed a group of friends who are all interested in doing math. I think we'll take one more question just because of time. What do we have here? Something that will close. This is great. Okay, I think this is a great ending question. Michael Dong asks, well, okay, so there's somebody who asked, maybe I shouldn't have called out the name, but asked how to get my parent to like math. This is also very interesting. And the reason I think this is very interesting is because that might actually also have helped to answer the previous question. You see, I think that our job as parents is not only to tell what to do, but just to do. We can say whatever we want, and people will listen or not listen or argue or not argue, but they can also see the way we lead our life. And so I think one way to have people like math is for yourself to also like math. And now this is a question that this student is asking, how to get a parent to like math. Well, honestly, I think showing that math is more interesting than just doing a bunch of like silly problems is the best way. And so I might almost say, like if your parent is interested in watching any of these, like the weekly live stream problem, like what we are doing here every weekend, I hope that that's somewhat interesting. I mean, my goal is the math that people do, that's very interesting to do, doesn't have to just be the textbook stuff. And in fact, it's not your parents' fault. I think that many, many, many adults in this world, their whole experience with math was something that is literally boring. It's actually really boring. I mean, if all you're doing is textbook problems, and I'm not here criticizing teachers. Teachers are doing a very good job, and we need to do that. But it's just like, if we're just preparing for the SAT, which is what I've seen people asking questions about, that's not necessarily that interesting. And afterwards, you're not really sure what you do with this. On the other hand, if you're able to now see how to tie all of this different math together, then it might be interesting. So that would be one way. And my hope is that, every family can kind of almost play with the math together. If you're an adult who's watching this live stream, I'm going to make an encouragement to you, which is that actually, I'm sure you're very intelligent too. The math that we are doing is not actually super, super hard. And I've also observed that adults who start to go and mess around with math, even at a later age in their life, oftentimes they suddenly understand everything so much better. And that's also true of me when I was learning math. The first time I see something, I don't know, and even my brain might have been distracted because in high school I might have been thinking about something else. But if you see it again when your students are doing it, you actually yourself could possibly get another insight into it. And also, if you choose some more interesting kinds of math to work on, it can be a lot of fun for adults. I also happen to know that there are some people who watch these live streams who are not even at the parent level. They might be at the grandparent level. And the reason is because actually it's useful. It's useful to keep your brain sharp. And my encouragement is if people like this particular variety of what we're trying to do in these live streams, please spread the word. And then hopefully everyone will find that math is interesting. Well, with that, I think I'll have to close up this Saturday night live math stream here with these different topics. I hope that you had a very good week. We will not have a show tomorrow because tomorrow is Sunday. On the other hand, we'll be back on Monday. And on Monday, we'll do the usual thing where there will be math questions, which are focusing on some particular areas and some particular questions. Students will raise the questions. The questions will be about algebra or geometry. But I'll, of course, try to find a way to relate it to real life. And if you liked what you saw, the way that I make these decisions of whether or not to keep running all of these live streams is directly related to the people who are watching. So do please continue to spread the word. And I wish all of you a great weekend. See you.